In 82, you got hired at WLVQ in Columbus, where you served as news director and air personality. How did this opportunity present itself?
Yeah, so Bowling Green was kind of my connection with that. The guy that I would eventually partner with there went to Bowling Green, and so he was on the morning show. His name is Pat Still. People around here might remember him. He worked for Riff doing the morning show for a while. Pat and Wags were one of the interim morning shows, and he and the program or the general manager were both Falcons. And I don't know, they just called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it. I think there was a consultant who was sort of, like the go-between, who
Yeah.
heard me and thought it would be a good fit. And so, again, the person who did the news was leaving for another career. And so, again, I fell into another job in Columbus. And
Now,
that was fun.
I've heard of Columbus, but how big compare it to a Michigan city on how big of a market it is?
The Columbus market, I don't think it's as big as the Cleveland market. It's certainly not as big as Detroit. I don't know if it was in the 20s, maybe.
Okay.
The weird thing about
So
it,
maybe
though,
like
was
in
kind of,
like Grand Rapids, maybe like Grand Rapids,
yeah,
maybe.
I guess, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, LVQ is a great rock station. I mean, they've been around for a really long time. So they're one of the best, like LVQ and TUE and Dayton were great rock stations, great heritage rock stations back then. But yeah, it was probably a mid-market move
Now,
back
one thing
then.
that struck me about that stop is it was your second job, and I contend that you learn
Yeah,
more from your second job than you do your first job because you kind of evolved and get it. You're like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. But what stuck with me is that you were
yeah,
there for 8 years. 8 years is a
yeah.
long time for a second job. Talk to me about why you were there that long and how your role maybe evolved at the station.
I think at that time, radio morning shows, would were kind of solid. It was just one of those things that if you developed one, people stuck with it. It was more profitable than venturing out. And my theory is that was sort of the beginning of the era of the morning show.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was fun there, and I think Pat and Wags were great partners. Pat went somewhere else, and well, both Pat and Wags came up here, ironically, to Detroit, and that's when they started putting other hosts in. As I remember, Ron, I'm glad you asked that question because now they started, experimenting with other people in the role of the host, and I guess it just wasn't, the same. So
Sure.
um, I heard from somebody else, and I ended up in Sacramento after that.
That's what I was going
So
to ask you about. That's the move that I'm really curious about. You leave Ohio, which is your home. Now you're going to California. How did this opportunity present itself, and was that a no-brainer for you at the time?
that actually happened through um, another consultant who hit
Okay.
me up sort of on the sly, and he goes, "Hey, you want to go out there?" The the radio station was KZAP. That was another one of those great heritage rock stations. Um, there's a little bit of an issue though with the way I was hired in, and I ended up um, staying there for about a month and kind of wondering what I was going to do with myself. It was a complicated situation. I don't even know if I'm at liberty to talk about, but I ended up, you know, kind of walking the dog all day long and the baby in the stroller. And then
Right.
Great American, which then became J-Core, which is, it was Taft Broadcasting. I mean, it'd been a lot of things. And they're like, hey, we heard that you don't have a job. They were the people that I left in Columbus, and they hired me again at their
I see.
station in Sacramento. So
That's what I was curious about is because how many radio stations in California know about an Ohio news person? I mean, that was just so that makes sense.